BBC time and time again, going back to Jimmy Savile, it is the keeper of sinister secrets. It is not a transparent organisation. It's not an honest organisation.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Showbiz Showdown with me, JJ and Anisiobi. This is still the only show on all of TalkTV where we take on the role of entertainment in the only way that TalkTV can. Now, today's episode is all about this man and the BBC.
Hello there, you awakening wonders. Now, this isn't the usual type of video we make on this channel where we critique, attack and undermine the news in all its corruption, because in this story, I am the news. I've received two extremely disturbing letters, or a letter and an email, but amidst this litany of astonishing, rather baroque attacks are some very serious allegations that I absolutely refute.
So it begs the question, is the BBC full of perverts? Now that sounds crazy, and it sounds like a crazy thing to say, but those aren't my words. That is a statement that the Tory Deputy Chairman Lee Anderson said. To quote him, the BBC is full of perverts. That much is clear to everyone. I don't want to agree with Lee Anderson, of course not, but maybe there's some sense in what he's saying. Joining me in the studio, my uncle and TalkTV legend, Kevin O'Sullivan. Kev.
Hello, son. Yeah, well, you know, I do. Lee Anderson, I think he's gone a bit far here. You know, the BBC has had many problems over the years, shall we say, revolving around perversion. But to say the BBC is full of perverts, that much is clear to everyone, may be a slight overstatement, but now we have the Russell Brand situation, we have a problem. And what is going on with him can be related to Jimmy Savile, to Philip Schofield, which isn't the BBC, but it's the same syndrome, and more recently, allegedly, Hugh Edwards. It's about the abuse of power, and it is about the state broadcast of the BBC's veneration, their deification of anyone who's a host or a presenter. Stick a microphone in front of somebody at the BBC and you're immediately called the talent. I've had it myself, you know, and trust me, I got no talent. So stars of the show at the BBC and other channels as well are just allowed to get away with horrendous things. And certainly in the past, it was a pernicious syndrome. And that's what we're talking about with Russell Brand. Back there in the noughties, allegedly, you know, he was at the centre of extremely nefarious sexual activity, and allegedly, executives turned a blind eye to that. I keep saying allegedly for careful legal reasons, but Alex Mahan, the chief executive of Channel 4, has just told the Royal Television Society that there clearly was a horrendous problem in the television industry back in the noughties. So I wouldn't go as far as Lee Anderson in saying the BBC is full of perverts, but it has a massive problem historically, and I think probably up until today, with the way some of its presenters and stars have behaved.
So was Brand held to the same standard as other talents? Because I feel like when we look back at the kind of stuff he was doing, he was kind of given a free range to be a pervert, essentially, and make sexual jokes, make guests female guests particularly, feel uncomfortable, and nothing happened. Time after time, BBC did nothing about it.
No, exactly. And it wasn't just Russell Brand, but Russell Brand was a particularly egregious example, you know, of the star that didn't behave well. And because he was seen as a star, because he was seen as a successful host of programmes on Radio 2, Six Music, and indeed BBC Television, executives stand accused of just turning their backs, turning a blind eye to all of this. Now, I'm not talking about Russell Brand here, but I do know, I mean, I was reporting on the showbiz scene back then, and I do know that's exactly what happened. Executives allowed various male stars, not quite literally to get away with murder, but you know what I mean.
In the investigation that the Sunday Times and Channel 4 put together, we heard that from a woman who was then 16 years old.
They called her Alice. That's not her name.
Yeah, and she says that a BBC car was sent to pick her up and take her to Russell's home. Yeah. One time it picked her up from school in a school uniform. Yeah. How can the BBC say they didn't know anything to do, like anything that was going on. They weren't suspicious at all. And I know Brand, according to the girl, Brand told her to say that she was his niece.
Yeah.
But still, why was there no questions asked? Why are you using a car to pick up your niece?
Do you know what they did? They changed that to goddaughter because Brand is an only child, so the niece thing doesn't quite work. But yes, BBC car. I don't think you can necessarily say the BBC is at fault here. I mean, they didn't know it was his car, and he told it to go and pick this girl up. But this is an absolute disgrace that this was going on. And the thing about the BBC, as I say, it's not their fault that he commandeered their car. He pretended he was using it, but he sent it to this school to pick up this kid who was 16. Here's what's wrong, though, with the BBC. BBC, time and time again, going back to Jimmy Savile, it is the keeper of sinister secrets. Mm-hmm. It is not a transparent organisation. It's not an honest organisation. And what it won't do now, the Sunday Times and the Times, and indeed Channel 4 Dispatches, have put in freedom of information requests to this publicly funded organisation, and their request is this: was the BBC aware of any complaints about Russell Brand back in those dark days? They won't answer. They just will not answer, and they have said we can't do that because if we gave you the answer to that, it might compromise Russell Brand's privacy. Well, here's the thing. First of all, I don't see that point. I don't see how that pans out. Secondly, I don't care about Russell Brand's privacy.
Yeah.
You know, I give you guys nearly 160 quid a year, and so do millions of other people.
Yeah.
And you owe us a bit of transparency. So once again, the BBC's mistake is always exactly the same.
Yeah.
It is to close ranks and keep secrets and try to keep the truth away from the public to save its own reputation. Look at what it did with Jimmy Savile. Time and time again, it covered up for them. Right to the end. You know, when Newsnight exposed Jimmy Savile for what he was, which was a gross paedophile rapist, a man who had defiled underage girls, dead bodies even, for donkey's years. When Newsnight investigated him and established all of this, and to their credit said, well, he's a BBC star, but we need to do this story. What did the bosses of the BBC say? They said, well, you can't, no, because we've got a special. We've got a Jim Will Fix It special at Christmas. Shane Ritchie's hosting it. You can't put that investigation on. That cost the then Director General, George Entwistle, his job, quite rightly so. So it's doing it again. It won't tell us whether or not there were complaints about Russell Brand back in those days, and Tim Davie, the Director General, says we're being transparent. No, you're not.
No, they are not at all. And it's not just the BBC we've got to have a go at bashing here. Channel 4, they employed Brand a lot. And
a great deal. Big Brother's Big Mouth.
Yeah.
That was his launch pad, really.
Yeah, precisely. And again, he was on there making sexually explicit jokes, harassing women in front of the camera. They've got to answer for some of this as well, surely.
Oh, yeah, Channel 4 are in this up to their necks as well. And credit to Channel 4, though. You know, Dispatches is a Channel 4 programme, so they put it on at their own expense. So in that respect, they're being a lot more honest and transparent than the state broadcaster.
Yeah.
But yes, Channel 4 sponsored him to the hilt. You know, they supported him. They turned a blind eye to what was going on. I mean, I know this. I was around then, and everybody talked about Russell Brand. And yet he was the star du jour.
Yeah.
And various executives thought he was the, God's gift to television. And therefore he was allowed to get away with this. And there's a lot of executives who are going to be squirming because there is an official police investigation into Russell Brand after a fifth woman came forward to say that he sexually assaulted her. And the executives who turned a blind eye, who enabled him, they may be in the frame and they may be getting their collar felt as well.
So there's a story, speaking of execs at Channel 4, there's a story that they were sat around a table discussing a new show, and Russell Brand's name was thrown in there as a potential host. And there were questions raised about the safety of females on the team. And they said, we'll just remove all the females from the crew. We've got to have Russell Brand in the show.
It's ridiculous what was going on. Who knows what's going to happen to Russell Brand, but there are dark days ahead for him, and many people think he deserves it.
Yeah, and that's possibly the same management who told Russell Brand to not be seen in public with this 16-year-old.
Alice, the 16-year-old schoolgirl.
Yeah.
I mean, the wrongness of that relationship.
Yeah.
You know, a television star sending a BBC car to pick up a 16-year-old girl from school, bring her to his house in her school uniform for sex.
Yeah.
And that is not disputed. I mean, just outrageous. I mean, that's not illegal.
No, it's not illegal.
And apparently, according to Alice, that was his big line of inquiry. I want proof you're 16. I mean, it's just so disgusting.
Yeah, it is. Well, there's going to be much more to say about Russell Brand coming up, I imagine. But leave your comments below. Let us know what you think. And tell us, is the BBC full of perverts? Comments below, like and subscribe. And we'll see you again next time.